Hello everybody, it's Tanya and welcome to today's video. It's been a while, long time no see, and I am delighted to welcome you back on my channel, and I am actually very excited to again talk with you about some books I read during my absence on BookTube. But because I haven't done this in a while, I feel like I will be a little bit awkward. Forgive me for that. It has definitely been a long hiatus because of nothing in particular, just life, some changes in life, some new things, new experiences, which are mostly good life, and because I don't really treat YouTube or BookTube as a job, I treat it as a hobby, so I wasn't filming because I didn't want to. And now I have new projects which I kind of came up with for myself, as well as Victober is upon us, and I am not very good at participating in these marathons, but there is something that really draws me to Victober, because I guess it's just because this readathon is dedicated to reading classics, and you know that I mostly read classics, though not exclusively, but mostly. Yeah, because I want to participate in Victober, I decided to come back. And the first video after a long hiatus would logically be books that I read during my absence on BookTube, which are not very many books because also I haven't been reading very much, but I have been reading. So these are the books that I read during my absence, and I would like to share them with you. So with no further ado, let's begin. The first one is Istanbul by Arhan Pamuk. Why this book? This is my first book by Arhan Pamuk. I have two of his other books in my collection, which are two of his most famous ones, Snow and My Name is Red, which I am very excited about. But Istanbul is my first book by him. Why I read this book is because my husband and I, we went to Istanbul to spend for vacation, just for a holiday for 10 days. So, and we went there with our parents. So my husband's parents came and my parents came to Istanbul, and the six of us we spent wonderful time in Istanbul exploring the city, and I am in love with that city. I do understand that this is not a city for life, like the life there would be very hard and difficult, but traveling there as a tourist, if you travel there as a tourist, you get the best of the city. You get the wonderful historical atmosphere, you breathe history, you walk on history, you tangibly feel it everywhere you go, at least in the downtown, because we lived in the Sultan Ahmed area, so it's like the center, I guess, of the city, and it was just phenomenal. And I thought to myself, well, since I'm going to Istanbul, I should probably read a book, at least by a Turkish author. And I went to a bookshop and I saw this book, and I thought, perfection, this is perfection. Book about Istanbul, I will read it in Istanbul, and this book is written by the author who has lived in Istanbul his whole life. So he was born in Istanbul, he grew up there. You cannot separate his life from the life of his city. I have to say, this book gives you a completely different perspective from the perspective you get as a tourist. Because as a tourist, of course, you see the old, almost ancient, but beautiful, magnificent Hagia Sophia. You see the beautiful Blue Mosque. You see the phenomenal view from the Galat Tower. You walk in this narrow, tiny, charming streets of Istanbul. You eat delicious Turkish food, and all of it is beautiful and impressive, sometimes funny. The cats on the streets are everywhere and everybody adores those cats. And those cats, they basically own the city. And you get this charming, beautiful, historical, impressive, magnificent view of Istanbul. This book gives you a different perspective of a person who lives in Istanbul. So you see the life of the city throughout a long period of time. So he remembers his childhood, his teenagehood, his life, his family's life, how the city changed. He describes the feelings that people who live in Istanbul experience. One of the chapters is dedicated to this feeling. It's the Turkish word, it's hüzün, hüzün. And he writes in here that everybody who lives in Istanbul shares this feeling, hüzün. And basically you can translate it into English as melancholy. Melancholy, somehow mixed with nostalgia, but it's a sad feeling. It's a little bit demoralizing feeling, because you see a city that is slowly fading away. You see how a great empire, that is Ottoman Empire, has left, and how the traces of former grandeur are still visible and they're still present in the city, but you also understand that those times have passed, and now the city lives in poverty. Many people live in poverty, and there is no escape from this poverty. And because you see it everywhere around you, because you see the ruined buildings, you see ruined neighborhoods, it just weighs on you. And it's in these circumstances, when all of it is around you, it's very hard to believe in a lighter future. It's very hard to feel energetic. It's not even very hard, it's practically impossible to feel excited. It's impossible to want to build something, because you don't believe that anything can be built, because around you are these ruins. And not only the ruins, just the lifestyle of people, how people behave. He says that people, by their behavior, perpetuate I cannot pronounce that word, perpetuate this situation by their choices, behavior, by their feelings, by what they do. They just make it to continue, and it's like this circle that there is no escape from. This book is very thoughtful, contemplative in a way, about life, not only of the city, of the family, of relationship between people in the family, so many topics. It's like a memoir of his and of the city, and of how his life was connected to the life of the city and still is connected. This book is also filled with photographs. Many photographs, so many of them. They are unfortunately black and white, but I guess the black and whiteness of them is fitting for this book. There is also a chapter which is called Black and White, and he writes in this chapter that he sees the city as black and white. So yeah, wonderful book, highly recommended, especially if you are going a trip to Istanbul, or if you have been to Istanbul. Highly recommended. I couldn't recommend this book enough. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, Istanbul by Arhan Pamuk, a wonderful read. Definitely pick this one up. Then a Russian classic, Haji Murat by Lev Tolstoy. I wanted to read this short novella. I've never thought about reading it before, but then I watched an interview with one of my favorite Russian animation directors. If you know anything about Russian animation, of course you know his name. It's Yuri Narstein. He is the director of Ежик в тумане, a hedgehog in the mist, something like that. And I watched an interview with him. He is a wonderful man, very knowledgeable, very also thoughtful, and he highly praised this short novella. I think the question was about books that he would recommend to children, because, you know, he is an animation director, and I guess it's logical that you would ask for his advice in literature for children. And he highly praised and highly recommended this short novella, Haji Murat, by Leo Tolstoy. Especially he recommended it to boys, but of course girls as well. Why boys? Because of the main character, because the main character is a man. So I guess boys would associate themselves more with the main character, and the main character is just a great example of resilience, strength, of fidelity, responsibility, and just character strength. It deals with the war between the Russian Empire at that time and the Chechen, I'm not sure what was that. Was it a separate country? Was it something else? Like Chechen region. In Russia we call it Chechnya. So he comes from that region. And he is known for being a great warrior. He is highly respected among his own people and in the Russian army. He is one of the leaders of the Chechen, I wouldn't say an army, but, you know, Chechen people. But he had a conflict with the main leader, and now his family is being held hostage by that leader, and he knows that eventually his wife will be horribly murdered, and his mother will be murdered, his son will be murdered, and he needs to save his family. He needs to get them out of the prison. And in order to do that, because now there is also a price for his head, so if anybody finds him in Chechnya, they will get a big amount of money paid to them. So now everybody knows that they cannot help him. If they help him, they will go to prison, they will be murdered. Even among his people now, he is an outsider, he has to run, and his decision is to go to the Russian side and to get help from the Russians, because he has always hated the main leader of Chechnya. He has some personal deals with him because the man murdered his family, murdered his the family that adopted him. So he has like personal scores with him, which cannot be settled. He has to have revenge on him. So he goes to the Russian side and he tries to get help from the Russian side, which is not as simple and easy as he thought it would be. So that's where I will stop. But the book is, like as I said, it's a great example of resilience and strength and bravery and self-respect. And it's just an example of all those qualities you want to have in everybody, in all the people. Intelligence, bravery, integrity, everything. It is shown in here in this main character. That's why I have to agree with Yuri Nerstein. I also do believe that this book is a great read for young people. Of course there is murder, so I don't know if you would recommend it to very young children, but I guess like early teenagers probably are already okay with reading about murder. I don't know, when I was a teenager I read about murder, I was fine. I mean, you decide for your children. But yeah, there is murder in here. It's a war, obviously there will be that. But also this is a book which is very much against war. It shows the futility of war. It shows how very many good young people who are very capable just die in there and waste their lives in there. So this is also a very anti-war book, which is also important. So yeah, that's a great novel. But very great short novel. Maybe I will do like a separate review video on this to talk a little bit more about this. But yeah, this is just like an overall impression of this novel. Also highly recommended. Another book, which not really a book, it's a very short novel, like 100-page novel. It's not even the whole book, it's this part I read, is The Last Day of a Condemned Man. That's the English title. The Last Day of a Condemned Man, by Victor Hugo. I read it in Russian in this edition. And this novella is just as it is said. It's the last days and hours of this one man. And this novella is very much like against the criminal, against the capital punishment. Our main character is condemned to the capital punishment, and in a few days he will be murdered on guillotine. He is currently sitting in prison. He is just writing his own feelings, emotions down on the paper. He also writes down what is happening around him, how his perception of everything that was happening to him changed throughout the court hearing, and then while his presence in the prison. He is guilty, but we don't really know what he committed. I guess it wasn't important. The important part of this novel is how unhuman and ultimately unhuman and criminal the capital punishment is. I guess it is a question for discussion. It is a question up for discussion, whether you can justify capital punishment, you cannot justify capital punishment. I don't really know where I stand on that. Victor Hugo was obviously very much against the capital punishment, judging from this short novella, but I have to say that his character is very likable. He is not one of those like psycho crazy people that you sometimes hear stories about. He is a very likable man. He loves his wife. He absolutely adores his daughter. He thinks about them constantly. He is intelligent, so he is a likable character. And when you read this novella, of course you also feel for him, and you feel the injustice that is being done to him, even if you know that he has committed what he committed, because he acknowledges it. He says that yes, I am guilty of what they accuse me of. I guess the conversation would be different if the main character wouldn't be so likable as this main character. Then a very strange book, which is The White Book by Han Kang. Now, I love Han Kang. She wrote one of the novels which I absolutely adore, which is The Vegetarian, and the novel which I adore even more is Human Acts. I read both of them a few years back, and I love her writing and I love her novels. This is a very strange book. This is a meditation on color, as they describe it, a meditation on color, and meditation on the color white. And it's very weird. I cannot say that like I get it. I cannot say that it will stay with me, but I think this book really does has its place, because sometimes you are not in the mood to read anything emotional. You are not in the mood to read anything heavy. You know, sometimes you're just in the I think you know this feeling when you're in a very quiet, kind of philosophical, contemplative mood, and you just want to be quiet, and you just want to kind of be alone with your thoughts, and you want a book that will not interfere with that, you know? And then this book is perfect. This book is perfect for those periods, I think. You can just pick it up. It has very short kind of paragraphs, just notices on something. It does have like a small kind of storyline running throughout it. She remembers her born dead sister who was born before her. And this book is filled with grief for that sister that she lost. This book is filled with some remorse, because she feels that her sister had to die for her to live. So there is some part of remorse mixed up in her feelings. But it's not like a plot line, it's just that like a theme that runs through this book. So it's a very strange book to describe, because there is some kind of story, but not really. She also talks about things that are white, like very just random things that are white, like a white door, newborn gown, for example. There are also photos. So salt, you see, like there is ashes, blizzard, like she just kind of comes up with all the things that are white, and white in her understanding becomes this color of grief, color of loss, color of pain, and that's all of her, and I guess feelings that she connects to this color, and all of her experiences that she has had in her life that were connected to this color, and somehow all of them are connected to grief and pain and loss. So it is a strange book, but I would recommend it for the quiet periods, when you are in a quiet mood, when you don't want anything loud, when you don't want anything overpowering your own emotions, when you just want to be quiet. I would recommend it. I enjoyed my experience of reading it. I enjoyed it, but it is a strange book. It is a weird book. I wouldn't say that it's a very affecting book. Yeah, it's a quiet one. It's a quiet one. But yeah, I would still recommend it. Well written, by the way, very beautifully written. Another book, The Chariot, which is also a small one. And this one I really enjoyed. I really like the author, and I'm completely fascinated by the author, and I want to make a separate video on him after I read. He has 2 books actually out. He has also this book, so once I read also a small one, so once I read this one, I want to make a separate video on this man, because the man deserves attention. And both of these books are actually translated into English. Both of them are translated into English, I checked. So that's why I want to make a video about him. And I'm sure very few of you probably heard about him, and I think you should know about him, because this man is just an example of the same themes that you encounter in Haji Murat. So this book, the same themes that you encounter in Haji Murat, but he is like a living, real human example of resilience, strength, of dedication, of faith, and everything that a human being should be. That's why I am just in awe of his story. I am in awe of him as a man, and of his life. This short book is actually his memoirs, so he wrote them himself. His name is Luka Voyna-Yesenetsky. He is a saint. He actually is a saint in Orthodox Christian Church. He lived in the 20th century, so very recently from us, and you can find, even on YouTube, you can find his voice, you can find recordings of his voice, you can find photographs of him. Still, you can find his relatives living in the city where he lived. So like, it's a very real, like it's an actual person, you know. Not like a legend, because sometimes when you read books about like very old saints, they almost feel like legends. They almost feel like something like fairy tales, you know, to me at least. With him, like, this is an actual person, this is an actual real person, a living example. Now he has already passed away, but you know what I mean, like a living actual example of what a person should be. He was a doctor and a priest. He was a very well-known, very respected, very talented surgeon in Russia. And at the same time, he was also a very respected, very well-known priest at the times when the Orthodox Church in Russia, that time Soviet Union, was prohibited, was when priests were murdered, condemned, sent to camps and everything like that. And he has been through all of that. And he has endured, and he has survived, and he has shown great resilience, just great strength. He has a very interesting life, because there is this very interesting dynamic between him and the state. On one hand, he is a very respected doctor. He is one of the best doctors in the country, one of the best surgeons in the country, one of the most talented doctors in the country. And everybody knows him, and people love him, people respect him. At the same time he is obviously a scientist, like he, you know, a doctor, so medical scientist, so he actually should be on the side of the materialists, of the Communist Party. But somehow he is a very devoted Christian. And he does not give it up for anything. He has this one famous saying, because when he was working as a doctor in the hospital, which is like was throughout his whole life, but he would wear priest's clothes. He would come to university to teach, you know, to the civil university, to the communist university. He would come to teach medicine, but he would be wearing priest's clothes. He would be wearing cross. And they tried to ask him to, you know, at least when you come to, you know, when you come to the university, wear civil clothes. And he said that no, you can only get the priest's clothes off me only with my skin, only together with my skin. That's like was his famous saying. That's how devoted he was, and how strong-headed he was. And he has been through horrible things, which I will not talk about right now, because I want to make a separate video dedicated only like to him and his books and his life, because I am just in awe. I am in awe. Even if you don't think of him as a priest, even if you don't take into consideration like the fact that he was an Orthodox Christian priest, just as a human being, his strength and resilience is insane to me. What he has been through is insane to me. But he was through this, yeah, because he was an Orthodox Christian priest. And at the end of his life he said that when you will talk about me, do not separate a doctor and a priest, because either view, if you take it separately from the other one, will be false. So yeah, I really want to make a video about him as well as his books. But I am just in awe of this man. I watched every single documentary about him on YouTube I could find. And yeah, I'm just in awe. Just it's crazy. His life is completely crazy. So yeah, I want to make a video about him, and I hope you will like it. But I want to do him justice, you know. I want to do him like, I want to tell about him in a, you know, way that does him justice. I'm very actually happy and grateful that I came across this little book, because this little book started my admiration of him. So yeah, I am very grateful that I came across him, and that now I know his story, and I want to share his story with you. That will be a separate video. Another book that I read, which is also quite short actually, is At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop. So this book won the Booker Prize, International Booker Prize, maybe 2 years ago. How many years ago? I'm not sure. 2020, 2021, I don't remember. I read it. I cannot say that it's my favorite. I think the idea is interesting. I think the idea is great, but the execution wasn't, maybe I didn't get it, but it just, I cannot say that I disliked it. I cannot say that I liked it. It was just like an okay. I read, you know, I'm Russian, so like the Second World War is a big thing in Russian culture, and you read a lot of books about war, and the common theme in the books that I read, which I guess is yeah, illogical, but they show how even in the harshest situations, people still preserve their humanity, how you can still be honorable, how you can still be good man even in the situations like that. this book is different. This book takes a completely different approach, which is also true. A very common occurrence, and maybe even more common occurrence than the other one. This book shows how the war breaks you. At least that's how I saw it. And because of that, I guess I cannot say that I completely loved it, because I always, it's just my personal readers, I guess, characteristic. I prefer hopeful books, and this book is not hopeful. Maybe a little bit, maybe just a little bit, but generally speaking, it's very bleak, it's very dark. It shows how a man has completely lost himself to grief, to shame, to horrors of war. And it is true, it is a true perspective, it's not an exaggeration, but I cannot say that I really loved this book, because I haven't found much hope in this. Though it's a well-written book. It's a well-written book, and I couldn't put it down. I read it very quickly. Cannot say like I didn't enjoy reading it. It's not a book to enjoy. That's it. It's not hopeful, and hope is something I always look for in literature. I always want to see in literature, and that just wasn't here. And that's why I cannot say that like I loved this book, even though I do appreciate it, and I do understand that it's an important book and it's a necessary book. These are my feelings towards At Night All Blood is Black. Another book I read is by an Egyptian feminist writer, and usually like I'm not very eager to read like feminist, like modern feminist literature. I wouldn't pick that up, modern feminists, but she is not a modern feminist. She is like the older movement feminist, you know, when women were fighting for the right to work, fighting for the right to get education. So that of course is reasonable, that of course is understandable. So that's why I picked this book up. She is an Egyptian feminist writer, and this is her short novel. It's actually her memoirs, so Memoirs of a Woman Doctor, where she talks about how she became a doctor, her life as a doctor. It's a very brief book. It's not very much in depth. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody unless you're interested in her like particular experience. At some point I was ready to put it down. I was ready to DNF it, because the beginning of this book is so kind of cocky, is so kind of like, I am so different, I am so much better than those uneducated stupid women. And there was this phrase that their lives reek of kitchen, and you know, like when these expressions like that, when I see them, I feel like immediate rejection, which is like, you know, I am better, all of them are nothing, they just live their housewives' lives, I am different, you know, this type of, it just immediately turns me down. I get angry and I just want to DNF it. And the beginning of this book is like that. I almost DNF'd it, but then I decided like this book is so short, I might as well just read it to the end. So if I'm going to hate on it, at least I will hate, you know, on the whole experience. I cannot hate on it because the second part of the book, she changes her perspective. So I guess that's the thing with like when you read memoirs, you know, people throughout their lives change, their perspectives change. I guess young age is very prone to being cocky, to being proud, to feeling like you are, you know, the chosen one, like you are the different one, like you are the better than others one, you know. It definitely was her experience, but as she grows up, she changes the perspective and she understands that she was wrong, and she understands that this feeling, this thinking that you are better than others actually made her miserable. So throughout this memoir you see the development of the woman, and I'm glad I didn't give it up. And this book actually taught me to don't give up on books immediately, especially if it's a memoir, because people change. So yeah, she definitely changed, and by the end of the book I actually quite enjoyed it. I cannot say that it was like a super wonderful book, something particularly deep, something particularly impressive, but definitely interesting, definitely a little bit maybe educational on life in Egypt in her time. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it again to everybody, but it can be an interesting read to some of you. And the last book I want to mention, which I actually read quite a long time ago, but that's Penses by Blaise Pascal. I read it in Russian, not in this English edition. I read it in Russian edition. This is a very easy read. If you don't if you don't want to go very deep into it, if you want to just kind of on the surface, kind of read his ideas, what he kind of thought, it can be quite an easy read, because I mean, you can also go deeper, you can read on him more, you can think of him more. So he's a philosopher, because we studied him in university, but I already forgot everything about him, so I just wanted to quickly just refresh my memory on what he was saying, what he was thinking. So I treated this read as just a kind of a quick refresher, so I didn't go very deep into it. But why I say it's quite easy to read is because it's not really like a full complete text. This text is famous for being just random thoughts that he left behind after he passed away. He was working on his big philosophical project, which was obviously religious. He wanted to justify the existence of God. He was a religious philosopher, but he didn't finish this project. So what we have are just pieces of his thoughts that he left scribbled on papers, and so they collected all of those thoughts into this book. And some of them you don't even know what he's talking about. Some of them are just so random that you don't even know what he means. But some of them are complete thoughts, some of them are complete kind of passages, a complete thought that he wanted to express. For example, how he proves the existence of God, how he proves that, how he talks about church, and many things as well. He also talks about human character, about human experiences, so many topics which are kind of random thoughts. I'm not very well versed to talk about this book here, but I just read it as a quick refresher. I will probably be back to this when I decide to go deep into this, if I decide. But yeah, it was an interesting read. It was a quick, enjoyable, and interesting read. That's what I wanted it to be. That's what I made it. But I enjoyed it. It was interesting. It was fun. And if you compare him to some other philosophers, like Heidegger, for example, I remember Heidegger from my university. Impossible to read, at least in Russian. In Russian, impossible to read. This is actually very readable. If you compare it to Heidegger, this is very readable. So yeah, I will be back with this book. And these are all the books. These are all the books that I read during my hiatus on BookTube. Let me know some of the books that you have been reading. Let me know some of the books that you would recommend me to pick up. And yeah, let me know if you're participating in Booktober. I want to participate in Booktober. As I filmed this video, today is the 1st of October, and I've already started The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope, which is the budget read for this year, Booktober. My first book for Booktober is going to be this one, Thackeray, Vanity Fair, which I'm also very much excited about. I've been wanting to read Thackeray since I made that video on Charlotte Bronte's reading. I will link it up here. It's an old video. I talked about her diary and the books that she loved reading. because she mentioned them in her diary and in her letter. It's letters, not her diary. Letters. And so she talks a lot about Thackeray there, like how much she loves Thackeray. And I have wanted to read him since then. So this October I decided to make it come true and finally read his Vanity Fair. And then I have like a whole list of books which I want to read. So yeah, let me know what books you are reading for October. I hope to see you soon. I hope so. I decided to promise nothing. I promise nothing. But hopefully I will see you soon. And yeah, have a good day. I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe you found some new book recommendations for your reading. That would be great. And for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a very good day. I hope you're reading good books and enjoying them. And I will hopefully see you soon in my next videos. Thank you very much for watching.